I recall this one time, an officer asked me when he found out we was going to build a cemetery in Belgium why we'd need it. Probably gotta be the dumbest question I ever been asked, here or back home. It's like he'd plain forgotten everybody we lost coming ashore in Normandy. And he wasn't the only one. The new units that came ashore after the fighting had slowed down, full of guys that thought the same. Like the Germans had had enough. Like they was gonna hightail it back home, have a conversation and lay down their arms. They couldn't been more wrong if they tried. 'Cause we didn't know it back then. We was gonna get our asses handed to us. The engineering corps, well, they hadn't even finished putting up the huts when the first wagons came in. Turns out, Germans had been waiting for us the whole time, sat behind miles and miles of barbed wire and minefields, ready to cut us to pieces. When they came in, we'd ask where the casualties had come from. Always got told the same name we came to hate, Hurtgen. Forest full of trenches, bunkers, and booby traps. We fed thousands of our boys into that forest like it was some kind of human meat grinder. And every day the same. Sometimes some of those wagons would take 3, 4 trips, hundreds of body bags, all for us to open up and empty. We got real slick at it, real fast. First of all, getting out the contraband from their personal effects, tidying up the bodies, where we could, how we could, spare their families seeing what we had to witness. I did hear one of our officers describe what we was doing as the devil's work. That don't even come close. Not even the devil would do to people what the Germans was doing to us. To make things even harder, amidst all this misery, this suffering, there was Lieutenant Boone, running his little side hustle. Boone was the kind of entitled son of a gun whose whole life you could read in the first minute you met him. He was loud, bullying, confident too. Knew there was nothing you could do to stop him, and he could hurt you if you tried. His daddy was some kind of high up from their hometown, some lawyer, judge, some such. Enough to get his little boy posted well away from the fighting, safe and sound. But even that wasn't enough for Boone. He just saw his new role as a way of making money for himself. He'd go through the possessions, picking out dollar bills, putting back the ones that was too blooded. Pocket watches, wedding rings, they all went missing. He even found out he'd been taking photographs of some of them all busted up bodies to sell to folk when he got back home. Any of the guys tried to stand up to him, they got thrown out the unit, sent to the front line. A couple even ended up coming back to us again in body bags. And at that point, nobody had the balls to try and stop him no more. It seemed it'd only be a miracle that could stop him doing what he was doing. Maybe a curse. There was this one unit, fighting out there in the forest, the 104th, liked to call themselves the Timberwolves. For some reason, when their boys used to come back to us, every one of them had a dog tag stuffed in their mouth. Believed some rumor had spread. Reason the tags had a ridge pressed in them was to fit between their teeth. Someone else had told them the tag needed to go in the mouth, make sure it was less likely than falling out of a body bag. No matter how many times we told the drivers to pass a message, not to do it, they kept doing it. Casualties coming back with tags in their mouths. Guess the message never got through. Maybe they was just too busy to listen. Most of the boys in that division, they were from out west, Nevada, Wyoming, and there was a few from the local tribes there. On occasion, they'd rotate their drivers, try and give the boys at the front line a break. And it's here, it went all wrong for Boone. This one day, wagon comes in from the Timberwolves being driven by a GI. He was originally Cheyenne or some such. Turns out he'd asked to drive the wagon that day as a couple of boys in the rear were his friends, from the same tribe, back in Wyoming. We offered him smoke, and whilst the orderlies was emptying the wagon, he overheard someone let slip about Boone. Next thing you know, all hell's broken loose. This crazy GI, he'd go straight round the lieutenant's tent, ranting, raging, threatening, screaming if he did anything like that to his buddies, interfered with them or some such, he'd be a dead man. All this did hell, All it did was amuse Boone, and as the MP started to take hold of him, he was plain up laughing in this boy's face, shouting back he's going to make sure he paid special attention to that guy's buddies. As they hauled him away, I just remember that GI shouting the same thing at Boone, over and over again. Chindy. The next morning, the lieutenant's not on parade, which in itself was not unusual. He previously allowed himself to be distracted with a fondness for ladies and liquor. But when he wasn't at breakfast, well, we had to go out look for him. Didn't take long. When they did find him, he was in the transit mortuary, where the bodies we hadn't managed to process from the day before. I didn't see him myself, but the guys that did, they said he didn't die easy, or quick. They found him lying on a slab, right in the center of the room. Lights off, face cut to goddamn pieces. On the floor nearby was that bag full of watches and jewelry, and a damn camera he was always carrying around with him. Don't take a genius to figure out he was on one of his nighttime shopping sessions, and somebody had caught him in the act. I hear tell it looked like someone had taken a bayonet, spent some time running it deep across his eyes, his mouth, his throat, and from the look on his face, he'd been alive when they did it, and feeling it too. Gives me the goddamn shivers, just thinking about it. The military police, well, they shut the camp down, start searching for a murder weapon. Ain't likely they were short of suspects to choose from. Anyway, they check the fences, see if anybody could have come in or out. They check all of us, blood on our knives, jackets, nothing. There ain't nothing. Till a little later in the day. That's when they got round to opening up the body bags of the guys who'd come in from the Timberwolves. The two guys, ones who the GI been so defensive of, zippers on their bags was found to get all busted and torn and blooded. Bodies inside, their faces and hands was absolutely slick with blood, despite the injuries that had killed them being nowhere near. And in their mouths, there was dog tags, all covered in blood, bent and chewed up as if they'd been gnawing on them, but with no injuries, no marks to their teeth or their mouths. Which of course raises a question. Where'd the blood come from? I mean, like you gotta ask. I never did find out the meaning of that word, the one the GI from the 101st used. Chindy, I mean. I asked a couple of guys on occasion from other tribes in the months that followed. They just went real quiet, told me to shut my mouth. Truth be told, the way the boy said it, and what happened after, well, I get the gist. Bad things happen, and if you make them worse, well, there's people out there, there's things out there. They may not like that, and they might just make things worse for you.